Let me bring in Leon Panetta, former Secretary of Defense and former CIA director under President Barack Obama. So when you're president or defense secretary in the middle of the war, how does it change the equation not to have the full, unequivocal support of our traditional allies?
It makes quite a difference because going back to World War II, during 80 years of the post-war era, the United States has provided world leadership by building alliances and strengthening alliances. Obviously building NATO, working with NATO, but building other alliances as well. Because I think we felt that it was important that we work with our allies in confronting security threats to our country and to their countries, and that would be the preferable approach to trying to deal with a dangerous world. To a large extent, we've impacted that long-term relationship that we've had with allies, and the United States is pretty much going alone in Iran.
Well, the Wall Street Journal is now reporting, Mr. Secretary, that President Trump has told aides he now wants a speedy end to the war. And people familiar with the matter say he's urging advisors to stick to that original 4 to 6 week timeline. He outlined that publicly. And that would mean, at the outside, another 16 days of war. From your experience, can a president just dictate that? This is when the war is going to end. This is when we have to achieve our objectives, say we've won. How do you see it?
Well, I think one of the lessons of fighting wars that we should have learned in the past is that it's always easy to start a war. It's never very easy to bring that war to an end. And that's the case right now. I mean, I'm glad that the president feels strongly that we have to bring this war to an end. I think we do, because in many ways we face a fundamental choice. Do we try to negotiate an approach that does end the war, or do we continue a prolonged war in the Middle East? And obviously, I think the preferable way to go is to try to negotiate some kind of approach that ends this war. That's going to take negotiations. It's going to take a lot of capability on the part of our negotiators. It's going to take some kind of off-ramp where we can establish at least a temporary ceasefire. And then we've got to focus on the key issues, not 15 issues, but the key issues, which are what kind of permanent ceasefire can we establish? How do we deal with making sure that they do not use their enriched nuclear fuel and try to create a bomb, try to make sure that that does not happen? What do we do to try to keep the Straits of Hormuz open and operating in an effective way? And what do we do in terms of sanctions relief for Iran and developing perhaps a fund that is going to have to deal with the damages resulting from this war? There's got to be a very tight list of areas that the United States focuses on, and we've got to engage. If we continue the war, the problem that you mentioned, if we go another 16 days of war and we incur casualties or they incur serious casualties, then the likelihood is you're planting the seeds for a more permanent war going on.
So you and the UN High Commissioner, who I just spoke with, and I'm sure you heard, are on the same page with that the answer is a negotiated settlement to end the war. I mean, it seems maybe one of the problems is that the president and the administration won't even call this a war, and here's why. Take a listen.
They don't like the word war because you're supposed to get approval. So I'll use the word military operation. which is really what it is. It's called a military decimation.
Right now, that formal authorization from Congress is not necessary because we're currently in major combat operations in Iran.
To be clear, we have heard Trump and Secretary Pete Hegseth use the word war many times, although the press secretary just said, it was combat operations. Is there any doubt in your mind that the U.S. is at war right now? And does what you call it change the reality? And maybe that even leads to why we're seeing so much frustration, even from Republican members of Congress.
It doesn't really serve much purpose to play word games when it comes to a war, because the fact is we have deployed our men and women in uniform into harm's way. Their lives are on the line. We've gotten some who've been killed. There are likely to be more casualties, but the fact is they're putting their lives on the line every day in this war. And when you do that, that's a war. And that's where we're engaged in. And the reality is that ultimately, you've got to find a way. I mean, it's always been the case. When you deploy our young men and women into harm's way, we ought to have a clear objective. We ought to have a strategy to achieve that objective. And we ought to have an end game. Those are the principles when you're putting people's lives on the line. And so the real challenge now for the administration and for the president is, he's declared victory a number of times. Let's assume, for the sake of argument, that our military objectives have been met, that we have gone in and destroyed Iran's ability to conduct war in that region. That's important. Secondly, we do need to find a way to open up the Straits of Hormuz, because it's very difficult to declare victory and continue to have the damage that's taken place from the closure of the Straits of Hormuz. So we've got to, and that frankly gives Iran some leverage here in terms of negotiations. So we've got to find a way to open up the Straits of Hormuz. And then we've got to find a way to basically sit down with whoever and negotiate those key conditions to bringing this war to an end. That's going to take a lot of work. It's going to take a lot of effort. And the president would do well to try to be straight with the American people about the challenges that we are facing in this war right now, rather than pretending that somehow it's not a war.
Former Defense Secretary Leon Panetta, it is always enlightening to have you on the program. Thank you for your time, sir.
Good to be with you.